Hi, my name is Stacy Levy. I am a speech-language pathologist and I am co-owner of Dynamic Therapy Specialists in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Today I'm going to be talking with you about the connection between auditory processing disorders and literacy. So first, I'd like just to get a shared agreement upon what literacy means, at least in the therapy world. Literacy is the ability to read, write, comprehend, and effectively communicate in a written form. So literacy is not only basic decoding, which is like that sounded out strategy, as well as encoding, which is also known as spelling, but also the capacity to understand, listen, interpret, and critically analyze information. Literacy is a language-based skill that begins first by hearing the information and then assigning meaning, whether it's conceptual or symbolic, to what is heard. So now it makes sense for us to talk about what auditory processing is and what is causing the concern, as in the case of auditory processing disorder. So auditory processing is really a cool thing. It's the brain's ability to make sense and interpret sounds that are heard. It's a complex system that requires the perception, the discrimination, and the comprehension of auditory information. It includes recognizing and interpreting sounds in space, filtering background noise, localizing sounds in space, and understanding language. It's pretty important. Auditory processing disorders, though, are really important for us to pay attention to. They can significantly impact our literacy skills because of how individuals interpret and process information, including speech sounds and language. In a different video, we talk about how important it is in order to be able to say the sounds correctly, in order to match that to their reading and writing. Just as important as how the brain is making sense of those sounds as how they are hearing those sounds. Let's talk about an example of an auditory processing disorder and how that might look in the classroom. So it might be that the teacher is saying spell did, and the child very confidently hears did, but the brain processes fib. And so he goes or she goes and writes F-I-B. Well, here's an example of where the child's auditory system has impacted the child's ability to correctly encode or spell the word, and then ultimately will affect the comprehension if they were to try to write that in a sentence as well. This is called the difficulty in differentiating between similar sounding words, did, fib. You may or may not be able to hear the difference, but they are different words. And if you don't hear the difference, then maybe you should also be concerned about an auditory processing disorder. So along with being able to discriminate similar sounding words, another auditory processing difficulty would be the difficulty with phonemic awareness tasks, which are the foundation for reading. So this would look like the difficulty manipulating sounds, identifying sounds and words, which is really a critical early reading and writing skill. Oftentimes by kindergarten, we are expecting children to be able to tell us what the first sound is in words. They need to be able to rhyme at even earlier age. That is all this manipulation of sounds in words. You can do it in a really fun manner, but if you have a difficulty processing those sounds, it doesn't matter in what kind of platform you present it to a child, they are going to struggle. At Dynamic Therapy Specialists, we have specially trained audiologists who not only evaluate, but also provide intervention for people with auditory processing disorders. Audiologists are the only professionals that are able to provide an auditory processing disorder diagnosis. We are very fortunate to also have audiologists who provide the intervention for such diagnosis. Other professionals can provide information about your child's auditory weaknesses, but it's only the audiologist that can specifically provide that diagnosis. Our audiologists ensure that the child's hearing ability is within normal limits, and they proceed then to evaluate what is the brain doing when the ears are functioning normally. What is the brain doing to process those sounds? What is it doing to make sense? And so oftentimes we'll talk about auditory processing is what does the brain do with what the ears hear? And so that is our audiologist's job to figure out, well, is it the difficulty that the child is having a hard time discriminating sounds, like we talked about in the did fib example. They're having a hard time isolating and manipulating sounds, like we talk about like in the rhyming or the saying the first sound of words? Or is it that they have a difficulty filtering the sounds, that the air conditioning that's kicking on, or the pencil sharpener that's going off in the corner of the room? Are they having a hard time hearing the speech sounds separate from those other competing sounds? So this is what I would do. If you have concerns about your child's auditory processing abilities or their literacy abilities, meaning their ability to read and write at an age-appropriate level, then I would go ahead and encourage you to call dynamic therapy specialists, because we can help. We will go through the process of doing an in-depth analysis of where your child's difficulties are really starting and build the foundation from there. Thank you.